Welcome back. Let's bring in Labor MP Fiona Phillips and Liberal Senator Concetta Fierravanti-Wells. Welcome to you both. Great to have you on this Easter Sunday. Let's start with this atrocious story in the papers this weekend, in The Australian this weekend. Kylie Gilbert spent 804 days in an Iranian prison, and now she's being attacked by vicious trolls on social media, and specifically by a former University of Sydney academic, Tim Anderson. He's been running a disinformation campaign, a repeat of the campaign that Iran ran against her, claiming that she was a Mossad agent and a whole host of other things. Concetta, how disgraceful is it that Kylie Gilbert is now facing this sort of attack when she's just got back to home soil?
Well, we're very pleased that she was released, and one would have thought after the ordeal that she's faced that she would have been left to get on with her life in peace, rather than having this sort of disgraceful commentary against her by people like this Anderson fellow. I don't know this fellow, but I have to say anybody who supports the Assad regime and is trying to deny that the Uyghurs are being persecuted really does have a credibility problem.
Yeah, and he does have a long history. In fact, he was sacked by the University of Sydney in 2019 after he posted an image of a Nazi swastika on the Israeli flag. He also shared a photograph of one of his own students wearing a badge that said death to Israel and curse to the Jews. Fiona, what so concerns me is that the National Tertiary Education Union is supporting him. They're saying that it's cancel culture that led to his axing. Should the union be spending its funds backing a figure like this who is attacking Kylie Gilbert?
Well, what I know is that Kylie Gilbert has gone through the most awful ordeal, and I am very glad that she is back home on Australian soil. She should not have to go through what she's going through now. It is just terrible, and it absolutely needs to stop.
But what about the question of whether the union should be funding his campaign?
Well, look, that's obviously a matter for the union, but my position is that, Kylie Gilbert should be left in peace to do her role in Australian society. And as I said, we're very, very glad that she is back home.
But no problems with the National Tertiary Education Union backing Tim Anderson's protest against his sacking?
That's a matter for the union, and I'll let them speak for themselves.
Okay, let's move on to the next issue. There's been a change in political fortunes driven by the media's coverage of issues relating to the treatment of women. Just 2 months ago, there was talk about Albanese's leadership and his own survival. Now, that whole debate has shifted to Scott Morrison, perhaps not to the same extent, but he's definitely the person under pressure. It's a point Paul Kelly makes this weekend. He said the significance of the past 6 weeks for Labor is obvious. It now thinks defeating Morrison is feasible, and it has repressed talk about Albanese's leadership. Concetta, what do you think? Do you think the Liberal Party has a genuine problem when it comes to the treatment of women, or do you think this is something that the media, for political purposes, has emphasised on one side of politics only?
Look, Sharri, there is no doubt that there have been events that have happened at Parliament House which have been appalling. And that has led to a much broader discussion in relation to changes that are going to be necessary at Parliament House. But it's also raised the whole issue of quotas, which, as you may know, I'm totally against. I don't believe that bad behaviour of politicians should be conflated with a push for changing pre-selection processes and the introduction of quotas. I think those two issues, that argument is illogical and it's wrong. A person should always be selected on merit, whether it be for pre-selection for any position. So that's my position in relation to that. As far as the government is concerned, our responsibility is to ensure that we look after all Australians, that we put in place programs and policies that are of benefit to all Australians. And that's really where I'm coming from, and that's where I think ultimately we will be judged, whether we deliver for the Australian public.
Fiona, look, I want to ask you whether you think Anthony Albanese now has a chance at winning the next election because of this issue that the media has attacked Scott Morrison, that he doesn't get it when it comes to the treatment of women?
Look, there's a couple of things here, and I just want to say, until our Australian Parliament reflects our society in terms of male and female participation, I think there's always going to be issues. The Labor Party decades ago put processes in place to encourage more women into politics, and indeed it's how I ended up in politics as well. It encourages more people, and I think a party with gender parity is a party that can have good policies that we can support people in the community.
But Fiona, has the Labor Party politicised this issue of a treatment of women in order to target Scott Morrison?
Well, I think, Scott Morrison, again, speaks for himself. And look, you can't be someone and not be impacted by what has happened inside Parliament House. And it's just been absolutely horrific. The most important thing is that we do move forward, and the Labor Party has done that with its policies, and it's time that the coalition did the same. In terms of Anthony Albanese, I mean, he's doing a great job out there in the community, listening to people. Just today, I've been at the Mogo Family Fun Day. Of course, Mogo severely impacted by the bushfires. And I know what people are talking to me about. They're talking about their bushfire recovery, the fact that they can't get a bushfire recovery loan. They're worried about, their business.
I just want to stick on this issue for a minute. Conchetta, you don't find it frustrating, though, that this issue has been politicised?
Well, Sharri, in the end, bad behaviour by politicians means that those politicians should be responsible for their own actions. Group responsibility is never going to work and doesn't work in any society. So as far as I'm concerned, those politicians or those members of staff at Parliament House
we're only hearing about it on the one side of politics when it's absolutely occurring on both sides.
Well, it's very clear, Sharri, that it has been occurring for many years, and all politicians, irrespective of their political colour, should be responsible for their own actions. And the media should be focusing on bad behaviour right across the board, not just in one particular party and not the other.
All right, let's look at the Queensland shutdown this week. Peter Dutton today said that Queensland should be able to deal with an outbreak of a few cases without shutting its borders. Have a listen.
I had hoped that the closure of borders was behind us because, as we've seen the contact tracing process mature and, again, to be world leading, we should be able to deal with an outbreak of 1 or 2 or 3 cases. So I think there has been from the start, and probably even in this latest example, been a bit of panic by Premier Palaszczuk. It's incredibly disruptive and it makes it very difficult for people to be able to plan. We want jobs growing. We don't want them diminishing. We want to make sure that people's businesses are viable, particularly over the coming months, and the closure of borders in a knee-jerk way just doesn't help that.
Fiona, what do you think about this? Was this a knee-jerk overreaction to the few cases that Queensland had?
Well, what I know is that people are not getting the COVID vaccine fast enough. And, the government promised 4 million doses by the end of March, but it just hasn't happened. And I visited a nursing home in my electorate just last week. Those residents are still not yet vaccinated. But the alarming thing was that the aged care workers are not going to be vaccinated at the same time. So you can't have, we've got closed international borders and we've got, for example, whole swathes of workers like our travel agents that are not getting the support they need. So I think if the Prime Minister is going to say that we'll have all these COVID vaccines available and they're not available, then they need to provide the support that people need.
Conchetta, the Prime Minister did promise 4 million people would be vaccinated by the end of March. That hasn't come even close to happening. Why is this so slow?
Well, Sharri, overseas experience has shown us that that there have been delays, and I accept that, and I think we need to accept we did make a commitment to the Australian public, but the reality is that, and we need to deliver. on that. Now, we have seen some issues in relation to the vaccine. The vaccine is rolling out. I think in the end, though, what Australians want to see, they want to get vaccinated because they want to get on with their lives. What is not helping in this process is the spate between the states and territories and the Commonwealth. National Cabinet was supposed to resolve those issues, but it doesn't appear to have done that. But as far as the Australian public is concerned, they just want to be vaccinated so that they can get on with their lives. And I think that we need to just really move on this.
All right, Fierravanti-Wells, Fiona Phillips, thank you both.